Welcome, age of vintage society. I was in a top-class celebrity show in Los Angeles recently when I heard the moderator talk about Vivien Leigh, and I listened to a fellow I presumed was a new generation movie star ask who she was. I immediately concluded that it was either he was joking or that he was still a kid between 1939 and 1951, the years this Oscar-winning actress was at the peak of her career. I told the fellow that at the time of her death she was the 16th greatest female movie star of classic Hollywood movies, but so sad she died when we needed her most. Why people believed that Vivien Leigh was possessed by a demon. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. So as I returned to my desk, I quickly scanned through my archives to see how I could remind my audience of this great beauty and talent who won the heart of fans with her sultry and energetic performance. Sadly, like her Best Actress award-winning movie Gone with the Wind, Leigh and her great splendour seem to have ironically gone with the wind. But those of us who followed the trend at her time would keep reminding fans of the struggles of legendary images like hers and her dogged contribution to present-day cinematography. While we can't control our fate in life regarding certain occurrences, we constantly hope that fate itself will work in our favour. This is the mood names like Vivien Leigh evokes in me as I reflect on events that defined the brief career life of this great lady. Her effort, success, struggles and tragic death will continue to fascinate contemporary audiences for years to come. Described as one of Britain's liveliest stars of her era, Leigh is sure a name to remember. As a writer puts it, Vivien Leigh simply brought together qualities that rarely come together because she was stunningly beautiful and undeniably talented. Whether she was performing on stage or presenting on camera, Leigh always delivered her best, which was also excellent, as she placed her name in the history book as part of Hollywood's legendary figures. Remarkable was her unforgettable show as Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind and as Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire that most fans will always remember. How she became such a phenomenon with just 19 movies to her credit in a career that lasted more than 30 years will tell you more about her larger-than-life image in the industry, and more so when most of her movies were British films. Regardless of her film stardom, Leigh, who so much loved stage shows, may have been one of those who thought theatre was the real performer's hub. As such, did not fail to entice her audience with stage shows, where she also got a large number of fans and accolades. Some interesting issues around her personal life were as famous as her career, as she had to struggle with a disorder that could best be described as a psychiatric ailment. Her marriage and professional partnership with Laurence Olivier were one area that had one incident too many that kept the media men busy at the time with issues about her. The unwholesome publicity generated by Leigh's private circumstances may just be what some people will easily remember about her today, even though those occurrences may unfortunately not be what she had hoped to be remembered with. Vivien Leigh's rise to stardom was instant as she appeared at RADA, where she did her initial professional acting job, though uncredited, and in the same year she made her first appearance on the West End stage, after which she was declared a movie sensation. Everyone applauded her youthful display as one full of potential. Critics were full of praises for the discovery, prompting movie guru Alexander Korda to place her on a mouth-watering movie contract of £50,000, which marked the beginning of her success. The reason she later described him as one of the most important men in her life. Born in 1913 as Vivian Mary Hartley, Leigh was in most parts of her career identified as Lady Olivia because of her wholesome connection with Laurence Olivier in marriage. Growing up as a delicate petite with unmatched beauty, Vivian naturally treasured acting. Being raised in a home where she was thought to become a wife and a mother, Leigh, after marrying at age 19 and having her only child Suzanne, went on to fulfill her dream by studying acting. Not very much is known about her childhood, but this British actress finished her drama school lesson, began appearing in minor roles in movies, before transitioning to an important part as the leading lady in Fire Over England in 1937. If there was anything critics say about her apart from her talent, it is her fascinating beauty. It was so obvious that she once thought of her physical endowment as something that made people think she is not a serious actress. But I don't think so, my heroine. Rather, your beauty is the reason you were astonishing in your career. Her earliest stage performances are linked to the female protagonist of Noel Coward and George Bernard Shaw comedies, and characteristic Shakespearean characters like Cleopatra, Juliet and Lady Macbeth. Laurence Olivier became her second husband in 1940 and stayed together until 1960. The duo had an awesome experience together, starring in many stage productions. Olivier would also direct some films until she was said to have developed a reputation for being difficult to control. Very few knew until it was confirmed that she may have been secretly suffering from bipolar disorder, including intermittent attacks by chronic tuberculosis that would later lead to her untimely death. Leigh and Olivier met sometime in 1935. She was reported to have asked John Buckmaster to link her with Laurence Olivier at the Savoy Grill, where he normally unwinds with Jill Esmond, his wife, once his Romeo and Juliet performance was over. Olivier recognised Leigh, having noticed her performing The Mask of Virtue, earlier praised her performance. Soon the two began an illicit affair after acting as lovers in Far Over England in 1937, as both Olivier and Leigh were still in marriage with Esmond and Lee Holman respectively. She was a special lady, at least for Olivier, who went through a lot with her, including an incident that occurred while she was getting ready to appear as Ophelia in Olivier's Hamlet in an Old Vic theatre at Elsinore. Leigh's mood swiftly changed without any provocation as she started screaming at Olivier, but suddenly everything calmed. Although she still did her show without any issues, she could not remember the following day if it ever happened. It became an initial strange occurrence that Olivier witnessed as the two lovers started cohabiting. Very funny and interesting too, their respective spouses were reported to have refused to agree to divorce requests that emanated from both sides. Then, in what I should call a gentlemanly agreement, their relationship became secrecy of the highest order. In case you still want to know, they were secretly on, but no one heard about it or talked about it. At this time, Leigh was inspired to try the American movie industry after being inspired by Gone with the Wind novel. She was said to have asked her American agent to create a contact with David O. Selznick when she heard he was doing a movie version of the book. Just before the production, as reported by a press officer, Leigh was said to have hinted that she had already given herself a role in the movie as Scarlett O'Hara. That view was also corroborated by a movie critic, C. A. Lejeune, who explained a conversation with Leigh in which she surprised those present when she asserted that Olivier won't appear as Rhett Butler, but I will appear as Scarlett O'Hara, and declaratively telling them to wait and see. David O. Selznick was initially sceptical about using her for the Scarlett role after watching her performance in Far Over England and A Yank at Oxford, describing her as being too British. But when Leigh arrived in Los Angeles, the story changed, because her charm captured Selznick as he quickly cast her. The following day, Leigh had a scene with Selznick, who organised a screen test alongside George Cukor, as he later wrote, "She's the Scarlet Dark Horse and looks damn good." Though the movie production was not easy for Leigh, she had other things occupying her mind, including her lover Olivier, who was far away in New York. Leigh was friendly with Clark Gable and Carole Lombard, his wife, but disagreed with Leslie Howard, even though they had emotional scenes to achieve. All the stress she went through made her put a call across to Olivier and said, "I hate film acting." Gone with the Wind came out and was a huge success, with her name all over with commendations. But Leigh stunned fans by saying that she is not a film star, "I'm an actress," referring to her preference for stage performance, and insinuating that to be a film star is tantamount to living a false life. Leigh might be right, but that is why they are called movies. Her love life with Olivier secretly continued, even though it was no secret among those in the know, but fortune soon smiled on them. Jill Esmond by 1940 was ready to let Olivier go, and Lee Holman accepted to divorce Vivien. Although were said to have remained friends, no wonder she kept his name for the rest of her life. A very funny situation, I must say, as both Olivier and Vivien had to forego the custody of their child to their ex-spouse. The custody of the kids was not as important for them as being together as an official husband and wife. So it was not surprising when on August 31st of that year Olivia and Leigh cemented their matrimony in California, and it was time to start co-starring with her husband, as Leigh had a screen test, hoping to co-star with Olivia in Rebecca, to be directed by Alfred Hitchcock, but Selznick and crew would not approve. Selznick noticed that Leigh lost interest in doing a part unless Olivia was cast as the lead actor, so Joan Fontaine took that role from her. She also was not cast in Pride and Prejudice, where Olivia appeared in 1940. Greer Garson also took that role from her. A similar scenario occurred with Waterloo Bridge, and Selznick used Robert Taylor instead of Olivia. Critics think the initial hitches the couple faced together in movies made them switch to Broadway production, but as soon as they joined a stage production of Romeo and Juliet for Broadway, the media publicised the illicit nature of their affair before they came together as couples, and probed their morality in not joining the UK in the war struggle. All these were to discredit the couple, even as other analysts were antagonistic in their valuation of Romeo and Juliet. In the words of Brooks Atkinson, they hardly act their parts at all. All the criticisers spelled doom for the production and the couple in what later became a total failure for the duo, who was said to have jointly invested almost all their savings, amounting to $40,000. To say the obvious, it was financially catastrophic for the couple. By 1943 the couple was in Britain, and now more nationalistic, as Leigh, after visiting North Africa as part of a review for the armed forces in the region, was said to have rejected a $5,000 weekly studio job just to volunteer for the war. She was said to have performed for troops before illness took over her, with a chronic cough and fevers. Sooner she was confirmed to have been infected with tuberculosis, which remained with her for weeks. After recovery, Leigh was in action for the production of 1945 Caesar and Cleopatra, when she noticed her pregnancy, but unfortunately that child ended in miscarriage. Expectedly, several occurrences made her feel so depressed, with reports of her rolling on the floor out of frustration and crying herself to insanity. Perhaps the beginning of her major bipolar disorder collapses as Olivia battles tighter with her to contain the symptoms of an impending series of hyperactivity and depression. The events that followed her crises were so touching that Leigh was said to have no memory of any of the incidents, but of course was very ashamed and apologetic each time. After making full recovery, she appeared in some movies that did not quite hit the mark due to the situation at the time with Hollywood boycotting British films. Olivia became a knight in 1947 with Leigh by his side at Buckingham Palace for the enthronement. With that, she became known as Lady Olivia according to tradition. And so, when the couple finally went their ways in divorce, her name would change from Vivienne to Vivienne, in line with the same culture. Critics think that Leigh would have outshined her present status if she had not returned to Britain during the war, as most of her fans would love to see her in more action than in very few movies. Her relationship and marriage with Olivia were both sensational and famous, as they appeared to be among the most popular celebrity couples of the post-war years. Leigh was famous as a screen image, but she tried so much to be recognised by stage production critics, who she thought were more interested in her beauty than her talent, and being a purist, she hard-pressed herself with every performance with very little improvement in that regard. All of these critics said added together to complicate her depressed condition at the time, as it seemed she was unable to handle the kind of criticism that she was getting. Leigh was medically declared to have been living with hyperdepression, that of course cumulated to her losing her marriage to a man she so much cherished and had sacrificed a lot to be with. I quite agree with those who praised her doggedness in life, as seen in the remaining 7 years of her life after divorcing Olivia. She took her destiny in her hand, leaving behind Olivia's shadow, amidst the harsh terrain plus ageing. She was still able to win a Tony Award in 1963 for Tovarich, her only attempt at stage musicals. Vivien Leigh left for the world beyond in 1967 when she turned 53 as a result of tuberculosis. As sad as her sudden death is to family and friends, the industry was shocked to hear that she is no more, not with several movies already in view for her. Vivien Leigh was suffering from herself, other actresses suffered from love. How Audrey Hepburn betrayed herself. You really have to see this.